This is the FX Audio DS07, and this is a pair of L07s. Hi-Fi College sent these out for review, but all thoughts and opinions are my own. I specifically requested two of these amps as they can be operated in either stereo or mono. With the recent popularity in mini mono blocks like the V3 mono, I wanted to check these out and see if it was truly worth spending an additional $150 for increased power output. And just to hit you with some thoughts right away, it is noticeably more power, but these actually do a fantastic job with a single unit in stereo. If you're connecting these to something with a high sensitivity, it likely won't be necessary, but if you're looking to drive something large or difficult, it could be worth the investment in some cases. Also, one just doesn't look as cool as two of these when they're on each side of the DAC. It's just so balanced with all of them sharing that same shape. Also, your OCD may be enough in some cases to pick up a second. I've already covered the DS07 in a previous video, but I'm going to include it today just because these are sort of designed to work together. They both have the same form factor and really work well in that way for a small but powerful little rig. I won't go too far in depth here, but just want to supply enough details so you can see if this pairing might be something you're looking for. Some quick highlights on the DS07 DAC before jumping into the amp review. It utilizes a ES9068AS DAC chip that offers 3 filter modes selectable through a menu structure or the remote. It's the same as the SMSL SU8S DAC that I have on hand, so I was already really familiar with the sound and the filter options. It isn't top tier, state of the art, but it's what I would consider very much so a good DAC chip. It supports up to DSD 512 native and PCM 786 at 32-bit. It's stated to have an SNR greater than 120, a nice input selection supporting USB, optical, coax, and Bluetooth, as well as options for both balanced and single-ended outputs. The balanced outputs, of no surprise, are available on the L07 amps as well, so you can go the balanced route if need be. It has a nice little color screen that actually displays useful info. It's small, yes, but at least it's more intuitive than many of the screens we get on some of the more premium products like some of the topping DACs. Also included is a simple but effective remote that comes in handy when using this as a preamp. The menu offers a number of configurations from changing inputs and outputs, filters, screen brightness, and Bluetooth settings. They did a really good job on a simple to use menu that gets you in and out without really having to ever grab for the remote to see what is actually going on. That's the 10-foot 60-second review on the specs, but if you're interested in a deep dive on that one, I'll link the dedicated review. Check it out if you're looking for something small, simple, and under $200 with a remote. It's a worthy option at its price point. What we're going to pair it with is the L07 amplifier. It's $150 for a single, and in this configuration, the DS07 and a pair of L07s, they come in at around $475. So we're starting to creep into a higher price point when we run a pair of these, and in most cases, it's honestly not necessary. But if you're looking to get the most out of these, running into BTL mode, that's the route to go. The wattage on these comes from an MA5332MS chip, which in theory puts out 100 watts per channel at 8 and 200 watts per channel at 4. Or with a pair in BTL mode, 400 watts. But before you guys sharpen the pitchforks and light the torches on that kind of wild number, they do list that at 10% THD. So likely expect a bit less. A more realistic number at around 1% THD would likely come in around 85 watts per channel at 8 ohms and around 165 watts at 4. And finally 330 in BTL. I don't have the measurements in front of me, but this is based on other products utilizing the same chip, measured much more conservatively. So while it's not 6,000 watts per channel, it's still a very usable and really quite powerful amp that should realistically be able to power most speakers with ease. Data security breaches rose to a record 3,205 in 2023, up 78% from 2022 and 72% from the previous mark in 2021. So it's becoming quite obvious to see a trend here. I've worked in IT for roughly 18 years, and I can certainly tell you it's a topic that gains traction every year. We're constantly growing our security teams and training end users on better approaches to staying safe. With over 353 million individuals being affected, it's likely you or someone you know has had some form of leakage or exposure in the past few years. Now, if only there was a way to help. With today's sponsor, Southern New Hampshire University, and their online cybersecurity program, you're going to have the opportunity to learn how to defend against cyber attacks and protect an organization's data. A few notes on the program. During the program, you'll learn about network, application, and incident security, as well as investigation protocols. You'll get hands-on experience in cyber labs and have the opportunity to participate in national cyber league competitions. SNHU's cybersecurity program has been designated as a National Center of Academic Excellence in Cybersecurity by the NSA. And of course, you'll be taught by faculty with real-world experience, one of the few opportunities to connect with people within the industry. Like I mentioned, I work in IT, and I personally believe there isn't a better time to start a career in cybersecurity. Right now, the expected growth rate is 32% by 2032. So even if you're not interested, possibly school years are behind you, pass the word to your kids or even grandkids on a field that looks very promising in the future. Go to https://snhu.edu/Matt also linked in my description, to see if you qualify for the program today. You might be eligible for financial aid, or even have previous credits that could fast track your degree. Click the link to get started. Now back to the video. Opening this up, we get a new design. I haven't ran into this from the Fozzies or IEMA budget amps yet. It's a really tightly packed unit housing the power supply internally. I don't have any specifics on the power supply, but I can give you guys a little look here at the components. What's interesting here is both boards share this thick metal plate in the middle that appears to serve two purposes. It's the mounting point for the power supply board, as well as the heat sink to the amp chip. If you look down the middle, you can see the thermal paste and the heatsink connecting the chip to this plate, which I'm sure helps to dissipate this throughout the chassis as well. The amp board looks well enough thought out. Plenty of space here, 4 swappable op amps if you want to go down that route. It comes with JRC 4580 DDs. Overall, I'm pretty impressed with the construction. Kind of a fun change of pace to see something different opening this one up. Getting into the highlights on this one for me, it's a fresh design. These look and feel really good, and we actually don't have a giant power brick hanging off the back. While it does have advantages in many cases, separating it from the amp, it's still an annoyance, and when I cracked this one open, we were able to get a good look at how this one was implemented. The volume knob feels fine, no qualms there, and truly, I won't be using it often. I would just assume put it at full 3/4, somewhere around there, and handle all the volume control from the preamp or DAC. And in this case of using 2 of these, it's really the only option. Otherwise, your balance between units is always going to be off. And I don't think we want to go back into a deep dive on dual volume knob discussions. This one has dual inputs, which is fantastic to see. You can select between balanced and unbalanced in the front here, and flipping it around, you'll notice the labels and the switch for the BTL configuration. Basically, you're just going to use the left connection on both amps for the input, and then both red terminals on the speaker outputs for mono mode. Also notice the full-size terminals on the amp. You don't see that often on these desktop-sized units. The new Fozzy V3 Mono nails it on almost every front on these, small desktop-sized amps, but they didn't get this one. The V3 is still stuck with the micro posts. On the L07, we get plenty of room for really any size banana plug or bare wire connections without feeling like you're a millimeter away from shorting the whole thing out. The power button is on the back. They must not have got my memo that I have a vendetta on products that only place the power button on the rear. I really feel like a power button right under that select button would do some good here, but whatever. Something else you might notice missing on the rear is any type of trigger. A lot of them miss this, but it's recently becoming more of a thing, which by all means it should be, that or at least auto sensing power on off, just to simplify these configurations. I would much rather turn on the DS07 DAC here, and that triggers both amps on, rather than giving 2 amps the reach around. There's certainly workarounds, but it's just extra. You could get a smart strip that powers on the amps with the DAC, or a simple power sensing strip that triggers the outlets based on the sensitivity that you set. The sound on this amp is what I would consider transparent. Others might label that clean or analytical, but really the easiest way to think about it is whatever you put in is pretty much what you're going to get out. I didn't notice any obvious coloration to the sound, so in some ways expect very similar sounds to other well-implemented Class D amps. This one doesn't appear to have PFFB, which isn't something new, but it's new to budget Class D amps. Basically, it's how the speaker behaves in the upper frequency ranges. Certain speakers will see a boost, others will be pulled into a null. Mind you, it's not nearly as big of an issue as it might sound from the description. For the most part, it only affects the very upper registries and won't be detectable with many speaker pairings. Would it be nice to have, and is it an advancement in Class D tech? Yes, it certainly is. There really hasn't been a better time to jump into the audiophile hobby. The Class D amp segment is loaded with budget buys, and the premium models are putting out crazy specs. We have to appreciate how simple it is right now to put together a decent system like the pairing today. The pairing today may not bust on the doors and put out state-of-the-art measurements, But by all means, it's a good sounding system that would impress most in this hobby with the proper speaker pairings. Please like, comment, subscribe if you're not already. I really appreciate all of you. Let's talk soon. Later.